Sound speeds. And ever since I did the review of the T.bone SC400, people have been asking me to review the two shotguns also by T.bone. That is the EM 9600 and the 9900. So I thought I'd go into a somewhat candid mode and discuss them and do a comparison as well as a review. For starters, T.bone is the house brand of Thomann, a German-based company that sells everything from instruments to microphones. And full disclosure, Thomann did send me both of these microphones in exchange for a fair review. I do get to keep them afterwards, but I'm not going to let them affect my opinion of these microphones, so you can expect this to be an honest review. As you know, I don't do unboxing videos, but I will show you what's on the inside of the EM 9600's fairly inexpensive carrying case, which, by the way, has a plastic handle and feels kind of like cardboard over the top of pleather. But I digress. Let's get inside. We have a 6-meter long, completely unbranded cable with XLR connectors on the top. We also have two forms of documentation, I guess in case you lose one, and we have a bunch of different components here. In addition to the clamp that you would clamp the microphone into, which has a 5/8 inch 27 thread on it, you do have an adapter allowing it to convert to a 3/8 inch 16 thread, and you have an adapter that allows it to convert to a hot shoe for a DSLR camera. You also have the windscreen that goes over the microphone itself. Now let's talk about this microphone for a moment. Notice it only has about 2 or so inches of an interference tube before you would actually be within these vents, or slits as you've heard me say in the past. It is fairly light as a microphone goes, and it also has a way for you to unscrew it to put a AA battery inside of it. That's in case you do not happen to have phantom power on your recorder, or your DSLR camera does not, for some reason, provide phantom power, which most of them I don't think would. Now, if you decided to plug onto some sort of an additional camera, like for some reason an ENG camera, you might have power that comes out of an XLR jack and is able to go to this, but in case you don't have that, it's at least an option. You also have a switch on the front of it that goes from off to cardioid to supercardioid. I got that right. For twice the price, you can get this not as impressively packaged EM 9900. Now, what it lacks in packaging, it makes up in quality of components. Let me explain how. Getting past the included specification sheet, we have a much better made clip than the one that came with the 9600, which is just plastic. Oh yes, instead, they gave you a plastic to rubber. This grabs the microphone much better and makes it a lot more pleasant for you to slide the microphone in and out. It also does a little bit better with isolation. Now, the adapter that was on the inside of the 9600 was plastic, but the one on the 9900 is all metal. So this is a 5/8 inch 27 thread that adapts to a 3/8 inch 16 thread that allows it to go on the end of a boom pole should you want to do that. It also comes with a much longer windscreen and, of course, the microphone itself. There is one switch on the microphone, even though it does not take a battery, and that is a second order roll-off switch right there, which starts at 180 hertz. This is the only shotgun microphone I've ever seen in my life that has an off mode, in addition to the cardioid and supercardioid modes, which they call normal and tele. But I digress. Let's start off with a noise floor test. I'm approximately 1 foot or so off of this microphone. Considering that it's a shotgun microphone, it shouldn't have a hard time picking me up. But let me ask you this. Did the noise floor sound high to you? If it did, there's a reason for it. If you look at the specifications, it has an 18.6 dB noise floor. Now, other things to note is that the sensitivity of this microphone is negative 50.5, which is very low for a condenser microphone. It also has a maximum SPL of 102 decibels and a frequency response of 150 to 15,000 hertz, which is not a full range that you normally run into on a cardioid pattern condenser microphone. But now, I'm going to point out that the other form on the inside, which I honestly didn't look at before, is for the tele mode. I'm going to back off just a little bit, and you're going to notice a couple of things. First of all, the noise floor came up, and the sensitivity did as well. There's a reason for that. The noise floor is now 20 dB, and the sensitivity is negative 41.6. The frequency response is now 80 to 17,000 hertz, and the maximum SPL is 96 decibels. Now, if you look at the actual frequency response chart for the microphone itself, it is up and down all over the place. And below about 300 hertz, it does naturally roll off. Doesn't have the best frequency pickup, in my opinion, but what do you think about the pleasantness of this microphone? Well, at least if you're using this in kind of a studio mode, like I'm doing right now, you might hear this noise floor, but maybe not. Depends on how you process your audio and how close you are. If you're talking way up on this microphone, you hear how thin I sound when I'm in this kind of tele mode. This is not the pattern you would want to be in if you're doing any kind of voiceover with this microphone. You'd want to put it into cardioid mode where it's going to fatten up the voice quite a bit. And if you're talking way up on this microphone for some reason and you're even loud like I am, you're going to be putting the volume of that microphone way down on your preamps, which is going to drive your noise floor low. Unlike the EM9600, which is designed for choir and vocal type uses, the EM9900 is strictly a shotgun microphone. It's also made of 100% aluminum, and I'm going to be using it about 1 foot or so off of the microphone. Now let's start off with the noise floor test. If it sounds quieter, that's because it is. Looking at the specifications, you'll see a 6.6 dBA noise floor, which is the lowest noise floor I have ever heard of on a shotgun microphone. Most shotgun microphones have about twice that, somewhere between 12 or 13 dBA, but this one has 6.6. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of believe it. I don't know how they did it for only about 75 pounds or $84 at the time of this review, but it's quite impressive to me. Now, yes, you're hearing plosives. I'm not using it with the windscreen on there because I want you to hear full fidelity on this microphone. But it also has a normal sensitivity of negative 33.6. It has a frequency range of 20 to 20,000 hertz. Woohoo! And it has a maximum SPL rating of 116, which in all honesty isn't great, but it's a lot better than the EM9600. Also, it has a much flatter frequency response curve, and because it doesn't seem to have as much smoothing on it, I'm actually prone to believe this one a little bit more than the ones that are showing a dead flat frequency response, because as you know, there is really no such thing as a perfectly flat frequency response curve. Every single microphone out there is basically based off of its prototypes while in production, and it's going to deviate maybe plus or minus 2 dB according to the entire, according to the manufacturing process. And it's going to go up and down throughout the entire range. Now, this microphone also has a 12, or rather a second order roll-off, which is negative 12 dB. And if you don't understand about the whole thing about roll-offs, watch this video right there. But it starts at 180 hertz. So if you notice right now, the way I sound on this microphone, you're hearing a little bit more bass in my voice than you would normally hear. But if I were to switch the roll-off on, did I manage to get it? If I switch the roll-off on, it's not as bassy on my voice anymore. As a matter of fact, this is more natural sounding to me and the way I sound in my ears. To me, this is the way my voice is going to sound if I want it to be more flat sounding, like with one of my DPA microphones, like my 4017 or 4018. So this right here is now much flatter because it's rolling off that proximity effect. Now, if I get all the way up on it, it's going to come back out. And I got to have this slightly off axis. Otherwise, you're going to be just I'm going to be nailing it right down the interference tube with plosives like this right here. If I do any B's or P's, you're probably going to be popping this all over the place. In true Allen type form with shotgun microphone testing, I took this out into the real world and gave it a full test. Let's see how it did. Here I am at my wonderful exterior location where I'm going to be recording today. And sorry I'm looking to the side, it's so that way you can see how far away these microphones are from my mouth. And right now, the EM9600 is about a foot away from my mouth, as is the 9900. Now, the reason why I have them both even with my mouth right now is I want to get kind of a lay of the land so that way you can hear the background noises as they are in this environment. And I'm trying to center them both up so that they are straight up on my mouth. Now, let's go over settings real quick. The EM9600 does have a switch that goes from off to cardioid to super cardioid mode. And since I'm putting it up against a long shotgun microphone, the 9900, I am wanting to actually put that in super cardioid mode. Now, the 9900 does have a roll-off. and I'm not using that at all for this test. Now I'm coming from underneath, and the microphones are about 15 or so inches away from my mouth. Talking into them directly, you're going to hear the sky above me. If a plane flies overhead, you're going to hear that. You might also hear the birds chirping around the background because at the time that I'm shooting this video, it is spring and birds are everywhere. There's also a noisy road over that direction, and aside from that, you might hear an occasional car go by, but it shouldn't be all that bad. This is the way it sounds on both of these microphones, directly point blank to my mouth, about 15 or so inches away. Under booming. Now both microphones are 2 feet in front of me and angled down at about a 30-degree angle. And this is kind of emulating what it would sound like if this was a reality or an ENG shoot and you were trying to come up over camera because you couldn't come straight in overhead. Now, one of the problems I'm running into in this test in comparison is that the EM 9600 is a lot shorter than the EM 9900, and because it's a longer microphone, or the 9900 is a longer microphone with a longer interference tube, it's going to stick out more in front. And now what I'm trying to do is even out the distance from the front of the microphone to my mouth so that way it will be a very even comparison. If you were to put a microphone over top of someone's head, you're obviously not going to have the exact same distance from the element or capsule on the inside on a shorter interference tube than you would a longer interference tube. But that longer interference tube means that the microphone has more pickup and reach. So technically, if I can just even both of them out to the top of my head, then that should be a pretty accurate test as to how they compare with reach. Now I'm talking about 90 degrees off axis to these microphones about 1 foot away. You're hearing a little bit of wind coming across the microphones, and unfortunately that's going to be the nature of me testing the microphones stock the way they came. Now the EM 9600 has a much shorter interference tube, this length about 3 inches or so, as opposed to the 9900, which has an interference tube that starts right below where the clip is. The reason I say I've already lost the battle of trying to even these things out is because right here you can see that the microphone, the 9900, is about 1 inch longer than the 9600. So that's just going to be the nature of this test. It's got to be because I'm out of clip length on the top of the 9600, and I'm already over into the foam a little bit on the 9900, but I'm not going into the little slits on the microphone because that would definitely affect the sound, even though this slightly does with regards to rear rejection or rear axis, the rear lobe. Now both microphones are about 6 inches over the top of my head, and I'm throwing my voice evenly between the two microphones to give both of them an opportunity to pull in my voice as well as possible. And just so it's been said, I'm recording this test using my handy dandy Tascam DR40. Not because it's my favorite recorder, but because it's pretty quick and easy and inexpensive to use. So if you're doing any kind of location work where you're using 2 or more booms, then this is at least an option for you to use as a recorder. Both microphones, 6 inches over the top of my head. You can hear the off-axis rejection and a little bit of the cable slapping against the boom pole, and I do apologize about that. Now both microphones are about 1 foot over the top of my head, and I am speaking directly between the two of them still. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance because my cable management skills may not be where you were expecting them to be for this video, but I'm trying to manage 3 different cables and only one of them is going in the middle of my boom pole. So I apologize about that. I'm going to do my best and see what happens. Now both microphones are about 18 inches over the top of my head, and as I go higher with these microphones, you are going to be hearing more wind hit them because it's spring at the time I'm shooting this video, and the winds are going to be kind of going crazy up there in the air. Now, this will hopefully give you a good idea of how these microphones both sound comparing to each other. The higher they go, the more the EM 9900 is going to start standing out as the victor with regards to reach because it's a longer microphone with a longer interference tube. Now we're about 2 feet over the top of my head, and this is where the noise floor of the 9600 is going to be more noticeable because my signal is decreasing while my noise level that is higher on the 9600 is going to start to become more noticeable when it gets quiet out here in this recording environment. And so that's something to note also, that you want a high signal to a low noise, and that's going to be better on the 9900 than it is the 9600 simply because the noise floor is higher and not just because of the interference tube length. Now that both microphones are about 3 feet over the top of my head, the difference between a short and a long shotgun microphone is going to become very apparent. A longer shotgun microphone is going to pull in more sound at a greater distance while rejecting out things better than a short shotgun microphone. And that's what you hear right now coming in with these two microphones. The 9600 is not going to be able to compete from here on out to the 9900 with regards to reach and signal quality and quality of sound. Now with both microphones about 4 feet overhead, it sounds in my headphones like I've lost the battle of signal to noise. But I may surprise myself when I get into post, because in my review of the Deity S Mic 2, I was also hearing the same exact thing, but when I got into post, I realized that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, and you're pleasantly surprised hearing both microphones right now. 5 feet overhead now. The 9900, I'm sure, is the clear winner with regards to reach and rejection. And also, to give you an idea, if I move my foot around on the ground, you're going to hear that a lot more so on the 9900 than you would the 9600, simply because the 9600 does not have the reach, and if it's able to pull out my voice, it's probably going to pull that out a lot better than it would foot noise. Now 6 feet over the top of my head, both microphones now are hearing my voice with people talking in the background. And that's okay, because this is all about the testing of the microphones, and off-axis rejection and rejecting out undesirable sounds is part of that. How are they doing? I'll be able to tell in post much better than I can out here, but 6 feet over the top of my head, and this is how it sounds. Now that both microphones are 8 feet over the top of my head, it's getting very difficult for me to avoid wind while doing these tests and comparisons. There's still a couple of people over there talking, there's a car driving by, and this is hopefully giving you an idea of how the off-axis rejection sounds when you put these microphones are about 8 feet overhead. Now that the microphones are 10 feet over the top of my head, I could barely hear anything in my headphones anymore. It all sounds like noise. Hopefully you guys are hearing something completely different than I'm hearing out here. I would love nothing more than these microphones to be pulling out my sound, my voice rather, very well at this distance. And we'll see how it is at 12 feet momentarily. Right now, and because both microphones are at the end of my ambient QP4140 boom pole, which puts them about 12 or 13 feet over the top of my head, this test is basically over. I can no longer go up any higher with this boom pole, but I hope this has given you a good idea of how both the EM 9600 and the 9900 sound when you go overhead and boom. So what did you think of this field test? Was I fair to both microphones in this field test? Tell me in the comments down below what you thought before you continue to watch the rest of this video and get my opinion. On that note, the EM 9600, what do I think? Well, in all honesty, I was wanting to really like it. I would have loved nothing more than to tell you that if you were a budget filmmaker and you really wanted to have a discount microphone that would work great for you in pretty much any kind of occasion, that you could rely on the 9600 for the close-up work and the 9900 for the longer distance stuff. But that was not the case at all. The 9600 to me has too high of a noise floor, and I did hear it when I got only a few feet away from Talent's head. If you're using it for choir work, I obviously didn't do that test in this video. The detail of this microphone also doesn't seem to be nearly there, in my opinion. My voice does not have all the crispness and all the detail that I get in other microphones. And it's not just because it's about a $40 microphone or about a 37-pound microphone. I think it's just because it is fairly discount, and that's just the way it was made. Even though it feels very solid, it feels smooth, it doesn't feel like they cut the corners on it at all. I just think the engineering behind this microphone does not suit my taste. Now, I am, of course, a professional microphone wielder, a boom operator, and that may be the reason why I'm being so harsh on this. If you like the quality of this, the tone quality of this microphone, by all means, please use the links below and check out the microphone. Consider even buying it. But to me, it wasn't all that impressive. Now, on the other hand, the 9900 was much more impressive. The low noise floor, the average sensitivity, the full frequency response, the fact that it was not rolling off too much just at on the low end, like the 9600 naturally does, until you hit that switch. And when you do, it sounds more normal. It sounds more flat, not as bassy. Now, I have used these two microphones in other tests as well, and you can listen to those if you would like to as well. Both of these microphones were featured inside of my video, which was called which kind of microphone is best in an echoey room. You can hear both of these microphones in that. Additionally, I use this microphone, the 9900, in my video where I try to make a makeshift sound booth for $100 and make a very reflective, noisy room quiet for $100. And I chose this very bassy microphone because it is just that. It is a very bassy, long reach microphone. But I'll tell you, it was quite impressive to me. The fidelity of this microphone is a lot higher than the 9600, and the quality of it only seems to fall off at a very high amount of reach. That's when the bass to me seemed to be there and still maintain, but the fidelity of my voice just seemed to fall off. At a close distance of even 5 or 6 feet overhead, it didn't sound bad at all. As a matter of fact, I would go as far as to say that this is my favorite shotgun for under $100. As a matter of fact, I would say that if you were on a budget and you are looking for something with a long amount of reach and sounds really good, this is the microphone to go with the EM9900. For $100, I really don't think you can beat this shotgun microphone. Obviously, if you're looking for something more like a pencil microphone or a large diaphragm, this is not what I would recommend. But for boom operation on a budget, this is the one that I'm going to start recommending to people. I was actually very impressed with the sound of this microphone. The detail in my voice was there. It was just a flat microphone. It sounds bassy and rich to me. I'm actually very, very impressed. So if you're interested in getting this microphone, there are links down in the description for you to check it out, as well as the EM9600. But that is my opinion of the EM9900 and the 9600. Thank you for watching this episode of Sound Speeds, and be sure to tune in the future for more product reviews of really interesting microphones and sound advice.
Have a question you'd like answered or want to add something? Be sure to write it in the comment section down below. You can also make a suggestion for future topics of discussion. Again, comment section down below, or you can email me at soundspeeds@yahoo.com. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on future sound advice.